Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies, and today we have a community birth story. If you listen to the podcast regularly, you know that this is one of my favorite type of podcasts to record. So a little bit of backstory. So I teach in studio twice a week and online once a week. And what we've been able to do is create really an amazing community of students. So I see many students twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And because of that, I get to know them and I get to hear their stories. I get to hear their concerns. They ask me questions. I give them what I've learned and share with them. And for many of them, they're there for a good part of their pregnancy. And so today we have Katie I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Katie Lohiya. Sorry, Katie. Even though I wrote it phonetically, I still got it wrong. Katie Lohiya. She had been coming to PYC since she was about 13 weeks pregnant. And she came 2 or 3 times a week. Even when she wasn't in New York City, she would pop up on the online, which I absolutely adored. And then she came back for postnatal. So I really got to know Katie well. We have a similar background that we're both dancers and performers. And so I just resonated a lot with her, and she asked questions and I gave her my feedback. So when I asked her to do her birth story, she said, absolutely. And she's like, and there's a part about a black bear in it. And I was like, oh, that's going to be interesting. So Katie shares her birth story. It is just a beautiful, beautiful story. And I'm so deeply honored that as she was explaining her story, her time at PYC was very much interwoven into her birth. And there's nothing to say, but it was an honor to know that the time we spent together helped her throughout her labor experience. So I'm really excited for you to hear Katie's story. It's really special. It's heartfelt. And at times it's funny. So I think you're going to quite enjoy that. Before we get to Katie's touching story, I always like to give some updates about what's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center. So I'm trying to think, is there anything especially new? Not that I can think of off the top of my head. We're continuing plowing forward with online classes 7 days a week. We've now been doing this for 4 years. We've gotten to be quite experts at doing our classes online as well as in studio and hybrid. And throughout the years, we've created a really in-depth on-demand library of all of our workshops. We've got on-demand yoga classes as well. We've got in-studio workshops. So we really have quite a lot of offerings that I'm excited to be sharing with you. We also have our teacher training that we do 4 times a year, our prenatal teacher training. 3 times a year, we do it online. And once a year, we do it in New York City. And once a year, we also do an online postnatal yoga teacher training. What else? Last thing is that I always put a call out to you, the community, to share if there's a topic I haven't covered. I actually was talking in class the other day asking, what do you want to hear about? And one of the students said she really wants to focus on understanding or at least discussing that huge identity shift from not being a parent to being a parent. So I have that in the works, and I'm excited to share that. But I'm being totally sincere. I want to hear what you want to hear about. This podcast, as much as I love the research and I love talking with folks, it's really for you, the community. So if there's something that I haven't covered that you want me to cover, or maybe revisit a topic, let me know. Or if you've got a guest that you think would be a good fit for us, they can fill out our application on our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. So please think about it and share what you'd like. And last thing I want to ask, when you have a moment, please take that time to leave a rating and review so people can find us. Again, this is to support the community, so I want the community to continue to grow. And then always a big thank you. Thank you for listening. Okay, we're going to take a super quick break. And when we come back, please enjoy Katie's birth story. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm doing well, thanks.
I'm so excited to hear about your birth story. I mean, the crazy thing is, I see you guys during pregnancy or in prenatal class, and you came a lot, and then
Yes.
you go away, and then you come back for postnatal, but I never really get to hear the whole story, especially for someone like you who came so much.
Yes.
We even had a yoga pose named after you, the Katie Special. So, I'm so excited to hear the details. So thank you for opening up and sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to share. And I just wanted to say that I did listen to podcasts during my pregnancy, and it was super helpful just, hearing from real, people who have been through it. And so I'm happy to sort of contribute.
Thank you. All right. So let's start with learning a little bit about you. Please share about yourself.
Sure. So hi, everybody. I'm Katie. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. So I'm from the Midwest originally. I moved to New York to get my BFA in dance. So I'm a dancer and graduated from college, stayed in the city, started dancing professionally. And then I met my husband in New York. Kind of a fun sort of backstory. I was working in a restaurant. He came and sat at my table and left his number on the back of our seat. And I called him. We were engaged a year later.
Wow.
And 10 year on our, let's see, it was the day before our 10-year wedding anniversary, which was, I found out I was pregnant. So it was like the best gift ever.
Oh, what a great story. It's odd. I just talked to one of my friends who I've known for probably like 5-6 years. And I just realized, she told me that she met her husband also waiting tables. She was the waitress.
Funny.
And I'm like, that is so funny that that's a thing. So
it happens.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your birth and your pregnancy.
Yes.
So once you found out you were pregnant,
yes.
How did you start to envision your birth? And I'm always curious what contributes to that idea and that vision.
Yes. So I don't know why, but even before I was pregnant, I always had just envisioned that I wanted an unmedicated, natural, low intervention birth. And I guess the more I thought about it, because when we were interviewing doulas, people would say, well, why do you feel that way? Or, what's the reasoning behind it? And it probably stems back from my own mom. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and she had 4 unmedicated births. So I guess I always just sort of took that as inspiration, and I had a couple friends that had delivered, unmedicated, and it just felt like something that I wanted to do and experience. And being a dancer, I'm in tune with my body, and it was something that I just sort of felt like I wanted to do. And then the more I sort of dove into, reading about birth and researching different methods and how all the hormones work and how the body works, I became like really kind of fascinated with the whole process. Like so much so that my doula was joking that she'll run into me maybe 10 years from now and I'll be a doula or in birth work in some way. So I don't know. It was something that, for whatever reason, I just kind of felt like I wanted to do. And then the more I read about it, the more like more passionate I became. So I guess like on that note, I still wanted to give birth in a hospital. I feel like if I was braver, I would probably be like team home birth. But I wanted unmedicated, most, low intervention that you can sort of get in a hospital setting. And so that was sort of my vision behind it.
I want to just remind you that, or something that hit my ears was like the bravery. It's not about bravery. Yeah. It's about where you feel safest.
Yes.
So I just don't want you to feel like you weren't brave, because you are. And,
that's true.
And it's about like whenever I have people talk about like, oh, I don't know where to give birth, I'm like, wherever you feel safest. And if being in a hospital is where you felt safest and best taken care of, that is where you should be. And I've had
You
people
know,
be like, I don't want to be in a hospital. I don't feel safe.
Yes, that's a very good point. And I'm glad you brought that up because I did think a lot about it. And I'm like, knowing my personality, if I was at home, you know, I would be more anxious. And, you know, that's not the case. Like some people, you know, are very anxious in a hospital setting, but I, you know, really felt fine with it. And so I did take a lot of thought and time to say, you know, where do I feel safest? And because that's so important, you know, to keep those hormones and everything, you know, going as it should. So thank you for bringing that up because that's a really good point.
I guess it just highlights, at least in our community in New York, is unfortunately we don't have that middle ground of like, at least in where you are, like the Upper West Side area, like we don't have a lot of birth center options.
Yes.
That's a conversation for another time. But also I want to highlight, like, I love that your mom shared about her births and how that did influence you. I think that's really beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. She is probably like one of the strongest people that I know. I just like respect her so much. And I love, how she has mothered me. And I just, so I feel like that really was probably where the biggest inspiration came from.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about your body awareness, because as a dancer, you have a lot of body awareness. So how do you think that pre-existing body awareness helped you when you were preparing for, I'm going to say, the discomforts of birth? Because as you know, I was a professional musical theater performer, but never a dancer. And there's definitely, at least in my experience, the choreographers weren't really interested in my comfort level. They were interested in outlook. So there's inherent discomfort. So how do you think that contributed to preparing for birth?
So I definitely think as a dancer, it helped. I'm used to working through different aches and pains and, you know, working your body, like pushing your body to the limits, if you will. So all of that, I feel like definitely contributed to the preparation, of having like a natural birth. But I would say even more so is just the sort of mental preparation, that you have to have as a dancer, and the way that I would sort of prepare for performances, I would say helped me even more than like the rigors of, you know, being a dancer. So I was thinking about this and I felt like there was a good story that correlated to birth in a weird way. So there was one performance, and 10 minutes before curtain, like literally, okay, 10 minutes. Thank you. 10 minutes. And I got an ocular migraine.
Oh,
and I literally couldn't really see very well. It was terrifying. I could sort of see out of one eye, but it was like distorted. So, people that get ocular migraines,
I do.
You know what I'm talking about? It's terrible.
First time I had one, I thought I was having a stroke.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
No idea.
So, and I knew exactly what was happening. And I was like, I have to perform for 2 hours. This was like partnering, like very rigorous, you know, you need your vision. So, but it's a small company. It was 10 minutes and I kind of had to just do it. So my director said, just whatever you need to do to be safe. Like everyone kind of was aware of what was happening. And I just kind of had to, you know, literally almost close my eyes and say, I've done all the preparation that I can do. I know that my body knows the steps and knows what to do. And I trust the people, I trust my partner very well. So I'm just going to have to do it. And I literally performed for 60 minutes with like one eye. And I feel like it's kind of similar to birth, where you kind of have to, you know, shut off like your thinking brain and say, I just need to let my body know, like let my body take over and do what it needs to do. and sort of trust that I'm going to be okay and come out the other end of it. I don't know if that's a good analogy.
Oh my gosh, it makes complete sense. And also I want to highlight, there's something you said about like, you had your dance troupe that you trusted.
Yes,
and
exactly.
having the birth team that you trust, you don't feel like you're going to be combating them.
Yes.
Also allows you to be like, jumping off the deep end, be like, here I go, folks.
Yes.
Help me, guide me down, guide me through.
100%. So yeah. So I feel like as a dancer, like that mental training, the mental preparation, I would say was definitely it came in handy, going into labor and with birth. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
I'm very impressed you got through that. I one time had to go on and I didn't know, it's before I was like diagnosed with migraines, but I started to have that awful, also monocular migraine. And I had to go on and do Midsummer's Night's Dream, and it was there in the light shine. It was very hard.
It's awful.
And my role is much smaller. Like I didn't have to go straight 2 hours through. So I'm very, very impressed that you did that. All right. So let's talk a little bit about yoga, because you came to PYC, I don't know, 2-3 times a week. You're there a lot.
It was my favorite place, like by far.
Oh, that makes me feel happy. How did the yoga, because we talked about how the dance helped you.
Yes.
Was there anything about how the yoga helped you prepare for your birth?
I think so many things. There's so many things I don't even know where to start, but I'll try to cover like the best things. So yeah, I was so incredibly grateful to find you guys very early on in my pregnancy. I think I was there at like week 13.
Yes.
I started coming, and almost immediately I was like, this is the best. I love everything that you're doing. And I loved, not only was it nice to just be in a yoga class where I knew whatever I was doing was safe, because I pretty much danced and taught up until the week I delivered. So I was used to moving, but there was things like as a dancer where I'm like, I know I can do this, but is it safe? And is this going to be all right for my body? Is this preparing my body for birth? So it was just so nice to be in a space where I could move, but I knew I was in a safe space where, it's tailored to obviously, the pregnant person, which is really nice. But I feel like the community that is there is so nice. So just meeting other women, kind of being in a space with other people who are pregnant is really helpful. And I think one of like my favorite parts is just the way that you started class and,
circle time.
Our circle time. Yes. And saying, okay, well, I have this, ache and pain. And, you learn that, there's other people that are going through similar aches and pains and things. But all of the like education that you sort of creatively weave into every class was super, super helpful. Like so much so that like I literally like heard your voice when I was in labor, like, open throat, open vagina, and like, this is a great birthing position, and hands and knees, this is a great birthing position. And, these are the baby speed bumps. So if you're stalled, like, try like this position. And so, you hear that 2 to 3 times a week for 9 months where it just kind of becomes like second nature. And so, when you are in labor and things are really intense, like to not really have to think about like, oh, like maybe if I can do like this specific pose, that already feels really natural to me. I've been doing it for, this long. So there's so many different things. I just love you guys so much. I feel like
I love that. And as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about this in class tomorrow. We're going to talk about this in class. I do love that the practice makes progress. And I love that.
For sure.
Hearing it over and over. Because let's face it, I am repetitious at times, but it does. It sinks into your head.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That makes me so happy. And when you're
in the like thick of labor, like it is helpful to not have to think too much. So knowing those like certain poses and those phrases that you can just sort of grasp onto is definitely really nice. So keep up the repetition because it was helpful for sure.
I love that you were talking. So if anyone's listening, like, what are the baby speed bumps? Let me just quickly explain that. So those are the ischial spines, and that's in the mid pelvis. It's the tightest bit. So in class, I'm always talking about asymmetrical positions to help widen that space. And I call them, I mean, no one else probably calls them baby speed bumps, but in my brain, they look like, maybe it's because we have a speed bump on my street, but it's like a place you have just like a little annoying bump in the middle of the road that slows everything down. And that's what it feels like in my brain for the pelvis. So I just giggled to myself when you said that. All right, I want to hear a birth story, especially because I believe you said there's a black bear somewhere in the conversation.
Yes,
so we're going to
take
when you said that, I'm like, there's a story to be told. All right, so we're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, I just want to hand the mic to you and hear your story. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I'm so curious how this unfolds. So just share however you want to share.
Okay. So I guess I'll start maybe like a day or two before I went into labor. So I was 37 weeks. I had stopped teaching at 37 weeks. So in my mind, I was like, oh, maybe I'll have a couple weeks to like relax and recharge and whatnot. But yeah, so 37 weeks. So I was like, all right, why don't we like start to maybe get some things moving? And I don't know, I was doing all the dates and all the things. And so I decided to go to acupuncture. So I went to acupuncture. It was on a Thursday, and I had been having like sort of Braxton Hicks, I guess. They weren't painful, but you kind of like feel like the tightening of the belly and things. And I'm like, all right, I think my body's, kind of getting ready. And for some reason, I always thought that I was going to deliver early. I said that like very early on. Like, I really don't think I'm going to go full term. I don't know why. I feel like 38 weeks is going to be right around when she's going to get here. So who knows? So went to acupuncture, and then that night I kind of started to feel, it felt different than Braxton Hicks, but from what I read, it was like, oh, if you're starting to feel like Braxton Hicks or the contractions and maybe they're painful, but, try to lay down. And then if they go away, then it's probably not labor. It's just kind of like those practice contractions or what have you. So I guess rewind just a hair. My husband and I have, we live on the Upper West Side, but we have a weekend home that we go to in Woodstock, New York. So our bathrooms were getting renovated, and they were scheduled to be completed on Friday, which was when I was that was 38 weeks. So went to acupuncture that night, went upstate and was kind of having like those contractions. And my doctor had said, as long as you're within 2 hours of the city, it's safe. So just don't go further than that. And, kind of feel how you're feeling. And if you feel comfortable, then I'm okay with you being, just within that 2 hours. So we go upstate that night. I go to sleep. I'm able to sleep fine. They went away. So I'm like, oh, it's probably nothing, maybe just my body getting ready. The next morning, I go to Target, and I'm in Target and I'm like, oh, that's different. This one is like a little bit more painful again. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. Like maybe I am going into labor. And so came back from Target. I texted my doula, and said, hey, like I'm sort of having, I don't know if these are contractions or not. It's, they're not regular. My water isn't broken or anything like that. And so she texted back and said, it could be early labor. We don't really know. Just eat a good meal, rest, take care of yourself, and keep us posted. So then fast forward to that night, they actually had just finished our bathrooms that day. And I was able to take a wonderful bath in my new bathtub. Everything was very relaxing. I'm like, oh, this is great. Wasn't having any of those like, pains, contractions, whatever. So then it's around 9 p.m. We have the string lights. I delivered in August. So it's like beautiful weather. We have the grill on. We have music playing. My husband upstairs took a shower and I'm getting ready to cook dinner. And I was like, okay, now, I'm having another one of those like pains. What, this feels different again. And so I had been given a series of like pre-labor, movements for Marianne Ryan, which was my physical therapist that I was going to throughout my pregnancy. So one of them was like this deep squat. So I was like, okay, maybe I should practice like, doing some of these poses while I'm having whatever this Braxton Hicks maybe type of feeling is. So I held on to the doorknob and I did like a deep squat. And as soon as I did that, I heard a pop and my water broke. And it was not like a trickle because I'd done like, all of the research, like, like maybe you won't even know it's your water. Maybe it'll be like a little like, did I pee myself? Is it like, no, this was like something out of a movie, like puddle on the floor, big pop, like no doubt that that's what happened. So, I called up to my husband and I was like, oh my God, my water broke. Like, we're upstate. What do we do? Like start like doing all the things you're not supposed to do, like totally freaking out. So he's like, okay. Call Demi, or call my doula. So I called her and I'm like, okay, so it wasn't Braxton Hicks. I'm definitely in labor. My water broke. And so, what plan is moving into action? What do we do? So I had a lot of discussions about what do we do if my water breaks? And I remember I had even brought it up to you in class. I was really stressed about it because I wanted to have this unmedicated birth. I was with a provider that I have to say was pretty intervention heavy. And but I had made the decision while I was still pregnant. And I said, okay, if my water breaks, we're going to go to the hospital because that's what my provider wanted me to do. And once I get to the hospital, we're, going to have them monitor me and I'm just going to try to labor, unmedicated for as long as I can, as long as I'm okay, as long as the baby's okay, and kind of take it hour by hour. So that's what we had planned. And it was funny because my husband was saying when I was really stressing out about this, like during my pregnancy, and he was like, it's such a low chance, you don't know if your water's going to break or not. Like it's, like, why are you sort of stressing about it? And I am really glad that I made those decisions beforehand because, just kind of being prepared for it. Like you don't really know how labor is going to go, but if you kind of have like, okay, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. If this happens, and I'm glad that I sort of made that choice. So anywho, flash forward, my water breaks. We're 2 hours upstate. And now we start packing up the car and, I'm like, just turn off the lights, turn off the grill, but, it's fine. We'll have our neighbors, like, we have lovely neighbors. They'll, pack up the rest of the house or do what needs to be done. But I do not want to have a highway baby. Let's get out of here. So let's go. So we're packing up the car. I'm inside. I think just like sitting down or using the restroom at this moment, taking a breather. And so then my husband opens the garage door and there's a black bear by the car.
How did the bear get in the garage?
So he was out. So the car was outside the garage. My husband was like opening up the garage door and and so the bear was like, the car was outside the garage and the bear was by the car outside. So my husband's like, oh my God, there's a bear. I'm like, what? So there's a bear by the car. My water breaks. I'm like trying to stay really calm and not freak out. But like a lot of things are happening right now. So he essentially scares the bear away. It runs into the woods. and now we're ready to pack
Oh my
up
God. I was going to say, like,
away.
how did you get rid of the bear? Like, I think I would have been terrified.
So we are kind of used to the house is like very much in the woods, and in the summer they do kind of get into like our trash shed and things. So we're used to them like being around, and as long as you like make noise, they kind of run away. But like now, I mean, like when you're like in labor, like trying to pack up the car is like not when you want to have to like scare away a bear
Oh my gosh.
from your car. So that happened. And then, so thankfully the bear, ran away and it was safe to, to load up the car and proceed. But one thing that I loved that we were able to do, so amid all of this chaos, my husband's Hindu, I'm Catholic, and we both pray together, like in our sort of own way. And that was something that I kind of wanted as part of my birth, and to kind of keep like faith a part of it. And so after the bear and like all the craziness, I just said, before we get in the car, let's take a moment. And I think we hugged and we said a quick prayer, and we sort of took a deep breath and said, okay, just, we said a prayer just about, keeping me safe and the baby, and that everything would go smoothly. It was like 30 seconds, but I feel like that was kind of a nice moment to sort of just be like,
yeah.
Okay, it's going to be all right. We're on our way, and we'll, now I think we're ready to go. So that was a nice moment that I'm glad we were able to kind of work in amidst the sort of, excitement. So we get in the car. Normally it takes us like just under 2 hours, and my husband was driving very safely, but we made it back to the city in like an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
There was no traffic, thankfully. And so we were able to go to the hospital. So now by the
Were
time—
you having contractions at this time?
Yes. Yeah. So I
Okay.
should have added that in. So basically, as soon as my water broke, I was having very mild contractions, but I was timing it because I remember one of the podcasts that I listened to, there was that one woman that it was like the unplanned home birth where she had a precipitous birth, and it was in 3 hours. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not having a highway baby. Like, that was 3 hours, and like my water broke.
I remember that one.
Yeah. So I'm like, get me to the hospital. That's where I wanted to birth, so let's hightail it out of here. So, but I was having contractions every 2 minutes, but it definitely wasn't to the point where like they were so intense, but it was like, yeah, these are enough to be able to time on my phone. And it was pretty consistent. Like every 2 minutes I would have, a contraction. So that was comforting, because one of the things that I had feared was, okay, my water is going to break, and then I'm not going to go into, the contractions aren't going to start, and I'm going to maybe have to be put on Pitocin and blah, blah. Your mind kind of starts running. But thankfully my body was really, in labor, I guess. So we get to the hospital. I delivered at NYU. And I have to say the nurses were super, super nice. There was no one in triage, which I know is definitely not always the case. So that was a big blessing. I was like the only person in there. They did the first like cervical check, and I was at like 1 centimeter. And I was like, that's it. Okay. We got a long ways to go, but that's all right. But I was definitely having, by then, like the contractions were like painful by the time I got to the hospital. And so much so my doula had said, listen, like whenever you feel like you need support, you call me and I'll be there. So you don't have to say, oh, my contractions have to be this far apart, or only when you're this centimeters dilated. Like whenever you need me, you call, which was love. I speak very highly of my doula. She was wonderful. So we get to the hospital, and I know things are early on, but I think I went to the bathroom and like had a really intense contraction, and I was like, call Demi right now, like I need help. And then And then like 5 minutes later, I was like, actually, I think I'm okay. So I was in triage for a little bit. One of the things that I made clear was that I technically wanted intermittent monitoring, but they didn't so much go for that. But what they did do was they said, yes, okay, we can do a hep lock. And we can do like the sticky monitor where it's on your belly, but you're not attached to anything. So we were kind of just going through all of my preferences and whatnot. So then pretty soon after triage, then they checked me into a room, still having contractions every like 2 minutes, but like definitely able to like talk through them and was still pretty mild. And then they did give me the hep lock. They put the monitor on my belly. And then I was having conversations with my doula. And she said, okay, now you're there, you're checked in, and I really want you to try to rest as much as you can. And because now it was like 12:30 at night. So she was like, try to rest. So, we're in our room. I can't rest. I know I probably should have, but I was just so excited. And also in my mind, I kept thinking, okay, my water broke and I'm sort of on the clock here. And so I just want to keep things moving. So I told my husband, you nap, I'm going to need you. But right now I'm doing okay and I'm coping well on my own. And so, you rest and I'll wake you when I need your support. And, but right now I feel like I'm doing okay. So then we sort of dim the lights and, I had a very relaxing like birth playlist that I put on, and I literally folded out the bed to where it was nice and flat. And, I literally turned it into a yoga mat.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I'm going to do some yoga poses and channel Deb right now.
Oh my God. I had no idea. This is hilarious.
Yes. And I was like, okay, so my husband's sleeping and I'm just like having my own little lovely birth yoga practice. And I was doing, of course, I did the Katie special, which is this little,
it's like a side stretch.
Yeah, it's like a side stretch, and that felt really good. I like sort of like straddled the bed, and I was doing the diaphragmatic breathing.
Oh, I love that.
Which I knew was working because my contractions would get like much more painful from doing that. So highly recommend to anyone listening, like whip out the diaphragmatic breathing. I feel like that progressed my labor like almost as much as like sitting on the toilet did. So I don't know. I mean, everybody's different, but I found that super helpful. So here I am doing the yoga moves and whatnot in the middle of the night. And then I texted my doula and I was like, okay, I've been like kind of doing my own yoga practice, but is there anything that you could give me? And so she had given me the sequence. I don't know what it was called, but basically like you stay in one position for
circuit.
The mile circuit. I think it's like 15 minutes or 30 minutes or something. Yeah. So she gave me that. And then we were joking about it later. She was like an hour on the dot. You were like, okay, what should I do next? Like give me another pose. So I was like very, I just wanted to keep things moving and wanted to, keep things progressing. And cause I'm like, I know that if my contractions stay consistent of every, 2 minutes, that there's really no reason for them to give me, Pitocin as far as I know, because things are progressing and, things are moving along. So still like throughout the night, things are moving along. Then morning comes, my husband wakes up. I'm like, I'm still coping well on my own. He feels better when he's able to take a shower. So my husband gets in the shower. And then he was like shaving, I think, at this point. And then I called out and I was like, okay, things are getting more intense now. I need you to stop shaving. And now I need you to help me because things are like, I need support. Things are getting more intense. So then at that point, what was helpful, I started really like starting to vocalize which I didn't really know like what I would gravitate towards when I was in labor, but definitely vocalizing was super helpful. And I think you said this in class too, of like low sounds, are really helpful. So it started out more as like sort of like almost like the om or like those kind of like moaning almost through the contractions sort of helped. So I was doing that. And then I would say fast forward a bit until now it's like 10 a.m. And I have to say, I had been in the hospital now from 12 until 10, and they really just kind of let me do my thing. I mean, the nurses would sort of come in, the doctor would sort of come in and say, okay, like, you're moving along. Just keep doing what you're doing. And they couldn't really check me because my water had broken. So they're like, we're really going to try to only do that unless it's absolutely necessary, or wait as long as possible to do a cervical check. So still laboring. Then I called it like leveling up. So I would sort of find something that works, like the moaning or like being in a certain position or like the breathing. And I would like a contraction would hit and I would sort of, vocalize through it. But then like the next contraction would hit and I would be like, oh, wait, hold on. And it sort of like it would get away from me to where whatever technique I was using, like, wouldn't work anymore. Uh-huh. And then I'd have to be like, oh no, okay, I need to dig a little deeper. Like, this is getting more intense. And like, I thought I had a handle on it, but now it's like even more intense. And so I would just call it like jokingly, like, it's leveling up again. And I need to, dig a little deeper. So then around like 10:30 in the morning, then I said, okay, like now after like a couple contractions hit, I was like, now I need my doula. Like things are really picking up. Like I need, all hands on deck. So she hops in a cab, was there pretty quickly. And then like, I feel like the mother of all birth support moves is that hip squeeze. Oh my gosh. Those hip squeezes were just like the best gift ever. So that I found super, super helpful. And I also took Yiska's The Comforting Touch for Birth, where she goes over the hip squeezes, and highly, highly recommend, because that was, I would say, one of the most helpful things, like physically, to just have that counter pressure. So then fast forward to around 11. And by this point, like, I had been basically in labor since like 9 p.m. the night before. Now it's 11 or 12, I want to say. I'd been in labor for like at least 15 hours. And so the doctor came back in and said, okay, we do kind of want to see like where things are going. Would it be all right if we did a cervical check? And I was sort of curious at that point too, like where am I at? And, so let's see. So they did a cervical check and I was only 4 centimeters. And I know you say like, so I was 4 centimeters, but I was 80% of face. So that was, I guess, comforting, but I really wanted to hear like a higher number. And like, you hear all these stories of people who are like, I'm ready to, like, I must be at a 10, and you're like at a 6 or something. But I'm like, I'm not even at a 6. I'm at a 4. And like, I know I'm not supposed to focus on the numbers. And I wasn't saying any of this out loud, but I think my doula saw my face and was like, okay, I was definitely feeling very like discouraged. And like, I just thought in my mind, like, how much worse is it going to get? Like, it's just the fear of the unknown of, is this really gonna, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. Like, if it gets more intense than this, like, it's just, this feels like so much. And I feel like I've done so much work, and I'm like, I was doing all the yoga things and I was moving around. But I think at that point, I did sort of need to rest. So my doula looked at me and she said, okay, now I really recommend that you try to rest. you're exhausted. You're doing all the things. You're doing amazing. But why don't we have you try to rest a little bit? And I was like, okay. So I laid on my side. She set me up with some sort of like peanut ball situation. My husband took over the hip squeezes. I think she went out to get my husband and her a coffee. And so I was there for about an hour. And then that rest must have done good, because after that, things kind of get a little fuzzy in the timeline in my head because they got so intense. But from there, I would say I went to probably every single coping mechanism I had researched. There was even a point where I love the beach and the ocean, and that's like something that's very calming and relaxing to me. So we had taken a sort of baby moon to the beach, and I had taken a video of the ocean and I timed it for a minute. And I was like, okay, when I'm in labor, I can watch the ocean. And that's like, how most contractions last and whatnot. So at one point I was like sitting on the birthing ball, watching ocean videos and like trying to just breathe through it and whatnot. And then I don't know, things I guess just really progressed. So I was in the bathroom. Another thing that was really helpful, and I learned this I took the childbirth education through PYC. It was through Boober, I believe. But the teacher said, if they ask you to rate your pain, even if you're at a 10, ask yourself how well you're coping. So even if your pain is at a 10, you might be coping at like a 7, or maybe you're only coping at a 1. And then maybe you do, want to go for the epidural because you aren't coping, I don't know, that sort of thing was really helpful mentally for me, because like kind of all throughout the labor, I was like, okay, this is now at a 10, but I'm still coping well. Like it hasn't, besides like those leveling up moments, I was still able to kind of cope, I guess. So I was in the bathroom and Demi and my husband are just like, in the room right outside of the bathroom. And, things are like really, really intense. I'm pretty sure I was in transition at this point. And so the anesthesiologist comes in and I can hear this conversation and he's like, hi, I hear that, things are really picking up, because I'm sure they could like hear me from the hallway. Probably half the hallway could, or half the hospital floor could hear me vocalizing at this point. He's like, I hear things are really picking up and we're looking at the monitor and we just want to make sure that, Katie doesn't, want any, pain medication or any assistance. And so the only thing that I could muster was, go away. So I screamed at the top of my lungs, and that's all I could get out was, go away. Because in my head, I was thinking, yes, like I am at a 10. Like this is, I don't know, people giving birth are freaking superheroes. Like this is the most intense thing ever. I can certainly see the appeal at the epidural. I get it now, but I cannot explain this to this anesthesiologist. Like it is taking every ounce of my being to focus on just birthing my baby right now. So I do not have time for you, anesthesiologist. Just go away. So that was pretty funny. So then he left, and afterward, my husband said, he turned to my doula and said, she screamed like, go away. Is she talking about the pain, or is she saying to the anesthesiologist, go away? And my doula said, no, I think she's saying to the anesthesiologist, like, go away. And so then Demi looked at Vapav and said, I think she's going to make it, and I think we're getting close. So then I come out of the bathroom, and there was one point, like, really nearing the end. And I just did like, and you as a doula and like having given birth, like you reach that point where like you do, if you're vocalizing, like it's really kind of like an animalistic almost experience, like just but everything that I had read was like, do not judge what sounds you're making, what your body needs to do. And like, we practice that a lot in class of like, hey, like you do you right now. Like, do you need to take a rest? Do you need to do circles? Do you need to sit in child's pose? Like, listen to what your body needs and just do it. So I was like, I do not care that half the hospital is hearing me make these sounds right now. Like, this is what I need to do to birth this baby. And so there was one point where I like essentially just like screamed through a contraction. And after it was over, I turned to Demi and my husband and I said, I was really channeling the bear on that one.
I love
and
it.
they were like, you channeled that bear. And I'm like, the black bear's coming back. So then you do sort of like, for me, like you sort of hit that peak and I went through transition and then I was sitting on the ball and it went from being like, okay, like I had this mantra where I just said like, oh, I can do it. 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 Like that was the only thing that sort of was getting me through. And there was this lovely moment where my doula said, you are doing it and you've been doing it and you're awesome. Like keep going. And I was like, that's something that Deb said. Like, and it was just this wonderful moment of like, it's so nice because I remember you had said that so many times. Like, if you reach that point where you're like, oh my God, like, I'm just, I kind of feel like I'm going to die, but like, I'm doing it. And like, you feel like you want to give up. But remember, like, you are doing it and you've been doing it. And I didn't even have that conversation with my doula, but like the fact that like she said that was just like such an uplifting, it kind of gave me the strength to keep going. And so then, there was one point where like my doula kind of looked at me with this one contraction and she was like, was that a push? That kind of felt like a push. And I was like, I don't know. Like, you're not really speaking at that point. But my body did kind of feel like it was moving into like, these feel a lot lower and like almost calmer. Like the sort of craziness of the transition dies down. And then I almost got like curious about what was happening. If I don't know if that sounds weird, but like I was sort of able to close my eyes and be like, oh, like this feels different now than what I've been going through. But I didn't want to say like, okay, like, let's just push again, like everything that I had sort of like researched and tried to prepare for said like, you want to push when like, it's almost not an option to push.
Right.
Like you really want to go with your body. And I really didn't want to be coached through pushing. And, again, it was like, I didn't want to do the purple pushing. I didn't want to have to be coached. I just kind of wanted to be able to listen to my body and let it do its thing. But, I was in a hospital and I did have a doctor and whatnot. But, so I sort of I got to the bed and I laid on my side and I just kind of said to myself, like, I kind of just want to rest and let my body kind of do its thing for a minute and give myself a minute to kind of recharge. Cause it had been like 20 hours at this point of like a lot of work and labor, So I sort of let my body do that I didn't even know it was this long, but that was like 2 hours of just gentle pushing, but not really pushing, but just kind of letting my body get ready. And then it reached a point where I'm like, okay, now like, let's, call in the doctor and I'm ready to like push. So doctor comes in, and, I'm on sort of hands and knees. Like, I don't even know what you call it, but it's like this giant cube thing. And then it had like a cutout in the middle.
Oh, like a stool, like a birthing stool.
Yeah, but it was like it was squishy.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd never seen or heard about this thing, but that's what I used. So it was like this giant squishy cube. I guess maybe like a squishy birthing stool. I don't know. But my elbows were on it. So I was sort of on hands and knees, but like sort of somewhat elevated. And so then she comes in and she's like, okay, so, you're doing great. And basically goes through the spiel of like, now you're going to, count to 10 and hold your breath. And I'm just nodding my head like, nope, not going to do that. But thank you for your advice. And, I'm going to just like kind of do my own thing. But I nodded my head and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to, breathe out my baby. And like, I'm having this conversation inside, not to anyone else, just I'm sort of, mentally going through. And I sort of said to myself, like, okay, maybe I can do a combination of both. So like the contraction would come on and they were counting, which was sort of annoying to me, but I was like, it's fine. I'm going to be in my own birthing zone here. And so they would count, but instead of holding my breath and doing the purple pushing, I just sort of like moaned through it or like vocalized through it. And then they would say like, you're doing great. Do whatever you're doing. Like you don't have to hold your breath because it was working. And so I did that for about an hour and then my baby was born and she was there. Yeah.
That
and
is so beautiful.
Oh my God. It was amazing. And I just, oh my gosh, I'm just like so excited. Just like thinking about it. Like this sounds so nuts. And when people say like, oh my gosh, like you had an unmedicated birth, like, would you do it again? And I was like, tomorrow, like I would do it 1,000 times. Yes. It was just, you can't even describe like how amazing it is to like, it's such a transformative experience. Like, I just feel so like, I don't know, like excited talking about it. Like, it was just the coolest thing ever. Like painful. Absolutely. But like, you also feel like a freaking superhero, because it was so challenging and it was such a big goal. And then I did it and I was just holding my baby and I was looking at her and she was like so alert and she was looking around and like, me and my husband we were saying, we were looking back at the birth and like, it was so incredible, like looking at her and how like alert and like awake. And it was just like this amazing moment of like, okay, like you did it. And, I don't know. And my doula kept saying like, you sounded so surprised because after I was holding her, I was like, we did it. Like we did it together. And like, and she was like, I don't know like why you doubted yourself, but you did it. And yeah. And that was that. I don't know. It's the best.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh. I love, this is why we do birth stories, is one that you can share and for others to feel inspired, but that's a beautiful story.
I just love it so much. And I have to say also, my doula was saying, because we had so many conversations, like, like I really want to do an unmedicated birth, but I really want to be in a hospital. And she was like, that's totally fine. Like wherever you feel safe. And, and we had done so much, preparation of like, okay, like, well, what if they try to do this? And like, but one of the helpful books that I read was like I think it's literally called like an unmedicated hospital birth. And in the very first chapter, it says it's very important that if you're choosing to give birth in a hospital and doing it unmedicated, you don't want to go into the hospital thinking that you're going into battle, because that's not good for your body, because you're not going to progress if you're so stressed. And if you're in that fight or flight mode, thinking you have to fight your doctors. So I would definitely say like, if I did this again, I would probably go with a provider that is less intervention less intervention heavy,
right?
Just so I didn't have to stress about it so much. It ended up working out beautifully, but we had to be so prepared to, make sure that my wishes were met. And, but I'm so grateful that I was able to have the beautiful birth that I wanted. So I guess it's also possible too, because, that's where I was getting. So I'm kind of going on a tangent, but my doula had said, your hospital birth almost felt like a home birth, because they really just let you do your thing. And that was so beautiful to watch. And it sort of like, gave me sort of faith again in like doing unmedicated births in a hospital, because you had such a wonderful experience with it. So,
in a weird way, your water breaking was a little bit of a blessing in the sense
I know.
that they did not want to keep checking you.
100%. Yeah. I think about that all the time too. I was like, that was a blessing, because that one cervical check where they said I was only 4 centimeters. And I'm like, oh, if they did more of those, I probably would have been a lot more discouraged.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a blessing, which is so funny because I was stressing so much about it.
What a beautiful story you're going to have to tell Kaya someday. Like,
I'm
it's
excited.
I feel like there's things that we share with our kids. Like my mom shares with me still at any point how I was such a quick birth. I was almost born on the way to the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
Daughter knows that I spent a good part of my labor for her in the shower, and that her pushing was super quick. My son knows that it took forever to get him out, and like it was days. Like, so they know certain things. And I feel like there's so many little jewels that you'll share with her. And just as your mom gave you a sense of confidence in her ability, that you can share this and that can kind of weave into her fabric of birth.
100%.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, we have to take another break. When we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents? We'll be right back.
Before Shopify, were you wondering, where are my sales at? Now you're selling with Shopify, the global commerce platform supercharging your selling. You have no problem selling online, in person, on social media, and beyond. Gary, easy on the cha-ching.
Oh, sorry, but my Shopify sales are through the roof.
Start selling with Shopify today and discover how millions of businesses around the world use Shopify to ignite their selling. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
Okay, we're back. So, what is one final tip or piece of advice you would like to offer new and expectant parents?
Yes. So I would say, to put it in a simple phrase, just trust your instincts. I feel like there's so many decisions. There's so much information. There's so much information, especially with social media and books. And there's so many different ways to go about things. To really just tap into your own instincts and what feels right to you, whether that is, finding the right provider, advocating for yourself when you're in labor. Once your baby gets here, if you're at the pediatrician and they tell you something and you say, you know what, like, I really feel like I need a second opinion on this. Like, just follow your gut, because there's so much information. There's so many choices that you have to make. But if you sort of tap into what, I don't know, it kind of sounds corny, but like what you feel in your heart feels right for you and for your baby and for your family, then ultimately I feel like that will be the most helpful.
That is so great. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing really your whole pregnancy journey.
Of course. Yeah. I'm so happy that I was able to share my story. This is, and I have to say, just thank you so much for, all of the support throughout my pregnancy, for postpartum now. I mean, really, your studio, you are really a gift to to the community. So I can't speak highly of you guys enough. And so thank you as well.
Oh, thank you.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.